Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyannijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirivod Bhutan Yatha Nidraya Yassakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Narayanam Padmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktin cha Tatputra Parasharam cha Vyasam Shukam Gaudapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya Padma Padam cha Hastamalakam cha Shishyam Tantotakam Vatikakaramanyaan Asmadgurun Santatamānatosmi Shrutismritipuranānaṁ Ālayam Karunalayam Namāmi Bhagavatpādam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Parabrahmanishtham Swato Dharmanishtham Ahimsaikanishtham Swashishye Sujushtam Yatinam Varishtham Gurunam Garishtham Dayanandarupam Madacharya Namah Shri Paramarthaya Sansaradhyasanashine Shrotriya Brahmanishthaya Tasmai Brahmavide Namaha Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om. Start with the Mangala Shloka. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodho Bhidhiyate. I welcome you all to the 45th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. The Tattva Bodha gave out the essence of Vedanta in the Sutra Vakyam Ātmā Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. And as we saw, the implications of understanding this are enormous. In fact, a clear understanding of this truth that is revealed by Tattva Bodha itself is moksha. Ātmā Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. You are the Satyam, and everything else is Mithya. You are a higher order of reality. Everything else is a lower order of reality. And what is in a lower order of reality cannot affect, cannot touch that which is in a higher order of reality. A dent in the bangle can never fundamentally affect the gold. The mirage water can never wet the sand. The dream can never affect the waker. Similarly, everything else being in a lower order of reality cannot touch me, the Ātmā, that is a higher order of reality. Nama Rupa cannot really affect what really exists, because Nama Rupa depends on the Satyam for its own existence, and therefore whatever changes happen to the Nama Rupa, the Satyam is always unaffected. This is the Satyam Mithya principle that we had seen earlier. And therefore I, the Ātmā, being the Satyam, am totally unaffected by any event that happens in the body or in the world. Whether it be in the body, the mind, the family, the profession, the possessions. whatever be the mithya anatma that we take, whatever event happens in this domain of mithya anatma can never affect the satyam atma. So, an understanding of this itself is moksha, because understanding that I am the Satyam means that I am unaffected by everything else. So, if there are any changes that happen to Mithya, Mithya comes, Mithya goes. If I give it reality, then it makes me a Purnaha. If I see that all of this is happening in a lower order of reality, then nothing can make me a Purnaha. I, as Satyam Atma, am ever Purnaha. So, this is the key to Purnatvam. This is the key to Moksha. But when I hear this, I am not able to assimilate it, because I say, how are you saying all this? I am affected by the body, I am affected by the mind, I am affected by the world. I am not able to see what you are saying. Vedanta points out that you have been using the word I all your life without understanding what it really means. In your vision of I, in your vision of who this I is, you have mixed up the Ātmā and Anātma. When Vedanta is saying you, the Ātmā, are Satyam, Vedanta is referring specifically to the Ātma Tattvam, that you really are. Whereas when I hear that and I say I am affected by the body, I am affected by the world, in my understanding of I have mixed up the Ātmā and Anātma. So there is a disconnect, there is a communication gap. When Vedanta uses the word you versus when I use the word I. So the student says, okay, if you're saying that I have misunderstood the Atma, I have not understood what the Atma is, then you tell me what the Atma is. That's where Tattva Bodha said, Stula Sukshma Karana Sharira Advyatiriktah Pancha Kośātītaḥ san Avastha Traya Sakshi Satchidananda Swarupa Sanyas Tishtati Sa Atma. So 11 anatmas are negated, as we saw. Sharira Trayam, Kosha Panchakam, Avastha Trayam. And why is this negation necessary? Because confusion necessitates negation. I am mixing up these anatmas with Atma, and therefore they need to be explicitly negated. And as we saw, Sharira Trayam, Stula, Sukshma, Karana Sharira. We saw this in detail. We analyzed all of these three bodies from the perspective of perceptibility, causes, function, nature, and constituents. And then we looked at the avasthatrayam. And why is this analysis of this avasthatrayam important? Because by understanding what is going on in the avasthatrayam, I can see what is intrinsic to me versus what comes and goes. These three bodies, Tattva Bodha connects the avasthatrayam to these three bodies. And therefore, I see the coming and going of these three bodies, these different costumes, and therefore I can understand that these are costumes not intrinsic to me, but they are incidental costumes. Therefore, Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti Avastha. The student asked, Jagrat Avastha ka? Shrotradi Jnanendriyaihi Shabdadi Vishayaha Jnayante Itiya sa Jagrad Avastha Stula Sharirabhimani Atma Vishwa Ityuchyate. So we said that we take this body to be really an integral part of who I am. But then Vedanta points out that this body is present in only one of these three avasthas. Only in the Jagrad avastha I am aware of this Sthula Sharira. In the Swapna and Sushupti avastha, I have no awareness of this Sthula Sharira. The Sukshma Shariram is totally withdrawn. The Jnanendriyas are not resident in their Golakas. And since the Jnanendriyas are not operating, I have no awareness of this physical world also. In the dream and deep sleep state, I have no awareness of this physical body. I have no awareness of this physical world. It's only in the waking state that the Jnanendriyas are present in their golakams. I am aware of this physical body and I am aware of this physical world. So, Shrotradi Jnanendriyaihi Shabdadi Vishayaha Jnayante. This physical world is basically Shabdadi Vishayaha, Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa and Gandha. So I let in this five-fold, five-segmented world through these five apertures into my mind. That avastha is Jagrat avastha. And Ātmā, that is identified with this Sthula Sharira and experiences this physical world, is given the name Vishwa. And as we saw, Vishwa means complete. In the waking state, in the Jagrad Avastha, the manifestation of this Jīva is complete. Because all these three Shariras are there. The Karana Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, as well as the Sthula Sharira. There is all these three bodies I am associated with. The Kartritvam is there, the Bhoktirtvam is there, the doership is there, the enjoyership is also there. The free will is there, therefore pursuit of Purusharthas is possible in the Jagrada Avastha. Therefore Vishwa, the complete individual. And then we come to the Swapna Avastha. We saw Jagrada Avasthayam Yad Drishtam Yad Shrutam Tad Janida Vasanaya Nidra Samaye Yah Prapanchah Pratiyate Sa Swapna Avastha Sukshma Sharira Abhimani Ātmā Taijasa Ityuchyate. And we saw that in the waking state, we are not just experiencing the world, but simultaneously, the mind is also recording events that are going on in the world in the form of samskaras and vasanas. Samskaras and vasanas are synonymous. And this mind has got an enormous recording ability. First of all, it records all of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa and Gandha. And secondly, it not only records what is going on in my present Janma, it has also retained these recordings from the past Janma. Innumerable past Janma recordings are there in the form of Vasanas in the mind. We never get this storage full error like we saw with our devices. The moment you have recorded a video that is 1 or 2 hours long, you suddenly see these messages saying, free up your space. But the beauty of the creation is such that we never get such errors. So now what happens is that the Sukshma Sharira withdraws from the Sthula Sharira, and now one of two things can happen based on karma. Either the Sukshma Sharira can remain totally withdrawn. If the Sukshma Sharira remains totally withdrawn, then I enter Sushupti Avastha, the deep sleep state. But due to karma, it is also possible that certain of these vasanas that are recorded in the Sukshma Sharira, they get triggered. And then I end up projecting an internal world based on these vasanas. And therefore, the internal world looks similar to my waking world because it's a replay of the recordings. I have the dream space, dream time, dream rivers, dream mountains, dream lions and tigers. And I also project a dream body. And whatever happens to this dream body happens to me. So my stula sharira is totally left out. There is no awareness of it. I don't even know where it is. I am now totally identified with this dream body. So we should note how this identification changes. See, in the waking state, I am totally identified with this body. But in the dream state, I have dropped this body completely and totally identified with a dream body. That shows that my identification is flexible. I can identify with this or that. If this identification with this body was so real, then it should never have left, never have departed. But this identification with the sthula sharira departs, and I am totally identified with this dream body. That itself is a pointer that neither of these identifications is the truth. So now I'm totally identified with the dream body and experience all of this dream Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa and Gandha. So this individual identified with the dream body is called Taijasa. Because there is no external light that illuminates this dream world. The entire dream world is illuminated by this internal light of consciousness. The Sukshma Sharira Bhimani Ātmā Taijasa Ityuchyate. And then, as we saw, due to karma, it is possible that this Sukshma Sharira can get totally withdrawn. And if this Sukshma Sharira is totally withdrawn, none of these vasanas are triggered, then I enter dreamless sleep. Sushuptyavastha ka aham kimapi na janami sukhena maya nidranubhuyate. Iti Sushuptyavastha karana sharira bhimani Ātmā prajna ityuchyate. So since the Sukshma Sharira is totally withdrawn, there is no possibility of knowledge at all. Because we saw knowledge takes place in the form of vrittis, modifications of the mind. Modifications have to take place in the Sukshma Sharira, in the mind. Since the Sukshma Sharira is totally resolved, no knowledge can take place about this world. And no knowledge can take place about the individual also. Therefore, in sleep, there is no subject knowledge, there is no object knowledge. The subject object division itself is not there in deep sleep. Aham kimapi na janami. Therefore, I don't know anything. This is my experience in sleep. And since this individuality is totally withdrawn, all the problems related to this individuality are also not there. In the waking state, I am worried about the condition of a body. Perhaps there is some sickness. Condition of the mind, there may be stress and tension. Condition of the family, condition of the profession, condition of the possessions. All of these worries are active in the mind. In the Jagrada Avastha and even in the Swapna Avastha, we can say that there are problems related to this internal projected world. I might be running away from a tiger I have projected. But then in the deep sleep state, there is no awareness of this individuality. The individual is still there in an unmanifest state, but there is no awareness of this individuality, and naturally, there is no awareness of the problems related to this individuality. There is no possibility of worry. There can be an unhappy waking state, there can be an unhappy dream state, but there can never be an unhappy deep sleep state. Everybody uniformly experiences happiness in deep sleep because the Sukshma Sharira is totally withdrawn. All of these worries, stresses, tensions, everything is offloaded. And In this calm state of mind, in the Karana Sharira, the Atmananda is reflected, and therefore happiness is experienced. Uniformly, the deep sleep of a rich person and the poor person are the same. The deep sleep of a king and a beggar are the same. The deep sleep of a saint and a sinner are the same. Sukhena maya nidranubhuyate. Therefore, this ignorance, total ignorance is experienced, and this happiness is also experienced, uniform happiness. But during the time of deep sleep, I don't say that I am asleep, I am sleeping well, I don't know anything. I don't say these things, because to say these things, the Sukshma Sharira has to be there. But we said that even though the Sukshma Sharira is not there, you are there in deep sleep. As the experiencer of the nothingness, as the experiencer of this happiness, you are there because you are the one who experienced it and are now, after waking up, recalling that I experienced it. I cannot experience somebody else's memories. I cannot recall somebody else's experiences, but the fact that I am able to recall that I slept happily, I did not know anything, the fact that I can recall this means that I was there in deep sleep also. So this is another very important pointer that we have to dwell upon, that I was there in deep sleep. And that is a pointer to what this I really is. Independent of the Sthula Sharira and Sukshma Sharira also, I was there. Karana Sharira Bhimani Ātmā Prajna Ityuchyate. So in the deep sleep, the Sthula Sharira is dropped, the Sukshma Sharira is also dropped, only the Karana Sharira is there, and this Atma identified with the Karana Sharira becomes an experiencer of this happiness, becomes an experiencer of this total ignorance. And that is called Prajna. So now what is the relationship between Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna and Atma? What is the relationship between necklace, bangle, and ring and gold? The necklace, bangle, and ring are all gold, but gold is not any of them. Because gold can exist independently of the necklace, the bangle, or the ring. In fact, necklace, bangle, and ring are nothing but gold in different Namarupa costumes. Similarly, this Vishwa, Taijasa, and Prajna are just Atma in different costumes. They are all Atma, but Atma is not fundamentally any of them. Atma, wearing the costume of the Sthula Sharira, becomes Vishwa, who experiences this Jagrat Prapancha. Atma, wearing the costume of the Sukshma Sharira, becomes Taijasa, who experiences the Swapna Prapancha. And Atma alone, wearing the costume of the Karana Sharira, becomes the Prajna, who experiences this total ignorance and happiness in deep sleep. So just as an actor may wear different costumes to play different roles, but the actor is none of the costumes and none of the roles. Similarly, Atma is playing these three different roles of being the waker, the sleeper, and the dreamer, but Atma is not any of these costumes nor any of these roles. Just as a crystal appears to be red, blue, or brown based on the color of the flower that is placed next to it, but the crystal's nature is not fundamentally altered. The crystal remains colorless. It only appears to be red, blue, or brown. Similarly, Atma is not fundamentally related to any of these costumes or roles. It only appears to be the waker. It only appears to be the dreamer. It only appears to be the sleeper. These three avasthas come and go, but I, the Atma, am the non-variable, the non-varying presence behind each of these states, costumes and roles. And therefore, Tattva Bodha calls Ātmā as the Avasthatraya Sakshi, meaning the witness of these three states, not fundamentally affected by the coming and the going of the states. Avasthatraya Sakshi. So this was a discussion of the Avasthatraya. And now we move to the next set of Anātmas. So we have already seen Sthula Shariram, Shariratrayam, Sthula, Sukshma and Karana Sharira. And we have seen the Avasthatrayam. So out of the 11 Anātmas, we have discussed 6 of these Anātmas, and now the 5 Anātmas remain to be looked at. That is the Kosha Panchakam or the Pancha Koshas. So we will read that portion now. And this is there on the PDF on page 8. At the end of the page 8, we have that Pañcakośātītaḥ K. So we will start from that point. Pañcakośātītaḥ K.
Pañcakośātītaḥ ke.
Annamaya Prāṇamaya.
Annamaya Prāṇamaya.
Manomaya Vijñānamaya.
Manomaya Vijñānamaya.
Anandamayasceti.
Anandamayasceti.
So the student asks that what are these Panchakoshas? Panchakośātītaḥ ke. And the Guru responds by giving the 5 names of the Koshas: Annamaya, Prāṇamaya, Manomaya, Vijñānamaya, and Anandamaya. So the first question is, what do we mean by the word Kosha? So Kosha means a sheath, a covering, or a case. For example, if we take a dagger, it's a sharp instrument. Therefore, generally, it is covered in a case meant for the dagger. Or a sword, it's covered in its own case. And therefore, a covering can be called a kosha. Now, what are these koshas really covering? These pancha koshas, what are they covering? Why are they called koshas? Because they cover the Ātmā. Now the question is, Tattva Bodha has already said, Ātmā satyam tadanyat sarvam mithyati. That Ātmā is the satyam and all else is mithya. So now the question becomes, if all else is mithya, that means the pancha koshas are mithya. So can mithya really cover satyam? So if we look at a pot, then the pot is nama rupa for clay. So pot is mithya, clay is the satyam. So can the pot really cover the clay? Can the necklace really cover the gold? Can the wave really cover the water? The answer is no. When we look at the pot, we are really looking at the clay. The pot cannot hide the clay. Similarly, the necklace cannot hide the gold. In fact, when I'm looking at the necklace, I'm looking at the gold only. The wave cannot hide water. When I'm looking at the wave, I'm really looking at its content, the water. Without looking at the Satyam, I cannot even look at the Mithya. Because wherever Mithya is, Satyam is right there. Therefore, Mithya can never really cover the Satyam. But then why are we talking about these koshas covering Ātmā? The issue is that if we get captivated by the Namarupa, if we get taken for a ride by the Namarupa and we forget, we ignore the Satyam in the process, then it is as though the Namarupa has covered the Satyam. It is as though Mithya has covered the Satyam. So if I am taking the pot to be the reality and I am not aware of the clay at all, the reality of the clay, then the pot has as though covered the clay. If I am taking the bangle, necklace and the ring to be the reality, that they alone exist. There is, I don't know about the gold, that the gold is the reality. Then the bangle, necklace, and gold and the ring have covered the gold. And therefore, similarly here, I am really the Ātmā. But if I don't know the reality of the Ātmā and I take something else to be the reality, then it means that that something else has covered the Ātmā. So it is this mistake that is figuratively called the covering of the Ātmā. What is experienced is taken to be me. And the attributes of the experienced are taken to be my attributes. And Ātmā is not even known in the process. So this is a mistake. And this is what is called the covering of the Ātmā. So Vedanta talks about these 5 possible coverings: Annamaya, Prāṇamaya, Manomaya, Vijñānamaya, and Anandamaya. So Annamaya refers to this physical body, the modification of food. It's also called a sheath. You can call it a sheath in English. A sheath means a cover. So it is the food sheath or the Annamaya. And then the next is the Prāṇamaya or the energy sheath, the energy cover, Prāṇamaya. And Manomaya, the mental, emotional layer of my personality. That is called the Manomaya. And this intellectual, rational layer of my personality, that is called the Vijñānamaya. And finally, the happiness that I experience, experiential happiness, that is called the Anandamaya. Now Tattva Bodha gets into each of these koshas. And one thing to note is that each of these koshas, subsequent koshas, is subtler than the prior one. So the Annamaya is the grossest of all these koshas, and the Anandamaya is the subtlest of these koshas. So now we will read what Tattva Bodha says about the Annamaya kosha. Pancha Koshas ke.
Pancha Koshas ke.
This part we have already read, so we'll go to the Annamaya kaha. Annamaya kaha.
Annamaya kaha.
Annarasainaiva bhutva.
Annarasenaiva bhutva.
Annarasainaiva vruddhim prapya.
Annarasenaiva vruddhim prapya.
Annarupa prithivyam yadviliyate.
Annarupa prithvyam yat viliyate.
Annamaya Koshah.
Tad Annamaya Koshah.
Stula Shariram.
Sthula Shariram.
So here, the Annamaya is defined, and we'll take the last word. It is the Stula Shariram. So as we see that these Pancha Koshas are not some new Anātmas that we are talking about, but it's basically a reclassification of the Anātmas that we have already seen. So it's a different way of looking at the same Anātmas. For example, a country like India, it is divided into 28 states and some number of union territories for the purposes of governance. But the same country can be divided into several, probably 16, 17, whatever it is, zones for the purposes of railways. And the same country is divided into this 540 odd constituencies for the purposes of these parliamentary elections. So these are all different classifications of the one entity, which is the country. And why are these classifications done differently? Because one is for the purpose of governance, another for the purpose of railways, another for the purpose of elections. So the classification that is done for governance purposes is not good enough for elections. The classification that is done for election purposes is not good enough for governance. So it depends on the purpose that we are trying to serve. That requires a different kind of classification. So the same Anātmas, the same individual, and the Anātmas that constitute the individual are divided into Sharira Trayam from one perspective. And the same individual Anātma, the Anātmas that make up the individual, are divided into Kosha Panchakam from another perspective. And each of these classifications is capable of giving us certain insights that are not available in the other form of classifications. So the Stula Shariram in the Sharira Traya classification maps to the Annamaya Kosha in the Kosha Panchakam classification. Both are the same. The difference is in the Sukshma Sharira and how it is classified. So the Sukshma Sharira, which is one entity in the Sharira Trayam classification, is classified into three koshas. The Prāṇamaya, Manomaya and Vijñānamaya. All three of these are basically further subclassification of the Sukshma Sharira. If we look at all of our transactions, then all of our transactions require three powers, three Shaktis. One is the Jnana Shakti, and Ichha Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. So first I know about things. That is the Jnana Shakti. And once I know about things, then certain things I know about, they generate desires in me. That is called Ichha Shakti. And finally, for the desire to be implemented, for the desire to be pursued, I need to act. And that is called Kriya Shakti. So these threefold divisions of the Sukshma Sharira correspond to Jnana Shakti, Ichha Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. Vijñānamaya Kosha is an apparatus for the expression of my Jnana Shakti. The Manomaya Kosha is an apparatus for the expression of my Ichha Shakti, and the Prāṇamaya Kosha is an apparatus for the expression of my Kriya Shakti. So Sthula Shariram maps to Annamaya Kosha. The Sukshma Shariram maps to the Prāṇamaya, Manomaya and Vijñānamaya Koshas. And the Karana Shariram is a part of the Annamaya Kosha, the part of the Anandamaya Kosha. So these are the mappings from the Shariratrayam classification to the Kosha Panchakam classification. So we now see that the Annamaya Kosha is mentioned as being the Stula Sharira, but the Tattva Bodha gives us some extra information in this Pancha Kosha classification. So we should look at the meaning of Annam. Why is it called Annamaya? So Annam in the common, popularly used language, it means rice that is eaten. But anything that is eaten in general is Annam. That is a more general meaning of the word Annam. So Stula Sharira is called Annamaya. What does this addition of Maya mean? So there is a certain suffix in Sanskrit called Mayat. And this has two meanings. One is it's a modification of something. If something else is a modification of something, then it's called something Maya. Or there's a predominance of something, then also it's called something Maya. So here the meaning is it's a modification of Annam, and that's why it's called Annamaya. So now the question is that how is this a modification of Annam? Why is it called Annamaya? So here Tattva Bodha mentions Annarasenaiva Bhutva. Annarasenaiva Bhutva. So we understand what Annam is. So here it says it's born out of Annarasa. So what does Annarasa mean? See, this is how the Vichara proceeds in Vedanta. We stay rooted in the text and we look carefully at every word because this is the Shabda Pramana. It is telling me something that is not knowable through the other means of knowledge. That is why it is important to take each Shabda and dwell upon it. So what does this word rasa mean in the context of Anna rasa? So we take in Annam, we eat Annam. And then what is not required is removed, evacuated by the body. But then what is retained by the body is Anna rasa. And what it is saying is that this Thula Shariram is born out of Anna rasa. So we may wonder, I was not even before I was born. Right? How could I have eaten anything? I could not have eaten anything before I was born. So how can I be born out of Annarasa? So this is where we have to go to the parents of the child. So the parents have eaten food. And the food is eaten by the father, the food is eaten by the mother. So Annam is taken in, and then Anna Rasa is retained by the body of the father. Anna Rasa is retained by the body of the mother. And this Anna Rasa alone becomes the male seed, the Shukram, also called sperm in English. And this Anna Rasa alone becomes the female seed called Shonitam, Shonitam, also called as the egg. So both of these are formed from Anna Rasa. Now during conception, there is a Shukra Shonita Sanyoga that happens, the union of the sperm and the egg. And that is what leads to the creation of the embryo. Therefore, the embryo, the initial version of the Sthula Sharira, which is there in the mother's womb, that is born out of union of the Anna Rasa of the father and the mother. So, Anna Rasenaiva Bhutva. And then what happens once the embryo is formed? For the next 9 months, it is in the mother's womb. The mother takes in food, the mother takes in annam, and the anna rasa is retained in the mother's body. The anna rasa is what feeds this embryo through the umbilical cord. Therefore, this baby starts to grow. The cell division happens at an enormous rate. The baby starts to grow in the womb. How? Through this consumption of annarasam provided by the umbilical cord attached to the navel. Directly the annarasam is taken in by this body of the embryo. So annarasena eva vriddhim prapya. Annarasena eva vriddhim prapya. How does this body grow? Through annarasam, annarasam of the mother. And then once this baby comes out after 9 months, then it again survives on the mother's milk. It's again annarasa taken in by the mother, which comes out in the form of the milk. And then when the baby is 6 months old or whatever, at that time the anna prashanam is done, where this baby is first given the annam directly. The baby makes all kinds of faces when it first tastes this annam. For the first time it's tasting this food. So then gradually the baby starts to rely on this external consumption of annam, gradually stopping the reliance on the mother's milk, and then the body begins to grow again. Annarasenaiva vriddhim prapya. Now the annam is taken in by the baby's body and is retained by the child's body. The child begins to grow. Annarasenaiva vriddhim prapya. And then becomes a full-blown adult. And again, consumption of annam continues 2, 3, 4 times every day. This happens. And then one may grow horizontally. After some time, the vertical growth stops. The horizontal growth begins in all these dimensions. How? That is also annarasam. Annarasenaiva vriddhim prapya. If one stops taking annam, sometimes people go on this dieting spree. I can clearly see the body reduces. And இப்படி இழைச்சு போயிட்டா, people ask, how you become so thin? Because he stopped consumption. His body is Annamaya Kośa. And what happens? We saw Shadvikaravat Asti Jayate Vardhate Viparinamate Apakshiyate Vinashyati. At some point, this decay sets in. And Vinashyati, the end of the body comes. And then what happens? Anna Rupa Prithivyam Yat Viliyate. It says the body goes back to Prithvi. Prithivyam Viliyate. What kind of Prithvi? Prithvi is said to be Anna Rupam. Anna Rupa Prithivyam. Why is the Prithvi said to be Annam? Because all source of Annam is the Prithvi only. The Prithvi is the source of all the food here. One may say, how do you say that Prithvi is the source of all the food? I am a non-vegetarian. I eat something that hasn't come out of the Prithvi. We say even if somebody is a non-vegetarian, if somebody is consuming some animal or a bird, then we have to look into how that body of the animal or the bird was formed. it consumed something that has come out of Prithvi. So if you take a carnivore, the carnivore may eat a carnivore or a herbivore. If it's eating a herbivore, then the herbivore's body was formed out of annam that came out of Prithvi. If the carnivore ate a carnivore, then the other carnivore must have eaten. Somewhere down the chain, it must have eaten something that's a herbivore or some plant. So plants are the only producers of food in this entire planet. There are no other original producers of food. That's why we say that all food originally is only vegetarian. And therefore, Prithvi is said to be Annarupa because Prithvi is the source of all Annam. Annarupa Prithvyam Viliyate. So it goes back to Prithvi, which is Annam. It may become fertilizer for the next set of plants to come out. This is Annam, is the Srishti Karanam. Because of Annam, this body was formed. It is sustained by Annam. It goes back to Annam. That is why this is called the Annamaya Kośa. So it is really Annamaya. It is really Annamaya. How does it become a Kośa? That's the question. So we say that when I commit a mistake, that I am this body, that is when it covers the Ātmā, that is when it becomes a Kośa. So when I say I am mortal, when I say I weigh 80 kgs, or I say I am male, I am female. So in all of these statements, if I give reality to this and forget the reality of I, forget what the I really is, and I take I to be this Annamaya, then the Annamaya has covered the Ātmā. This is how Annamaya becomes a Kośa. When this Tattva Bodha is trying to communicate something by using the word Annamaya. In fact, Tattva Bodha is not originally using it. This has come from the Upanishads. Taittiriya Upanishad talks about this. Talks about all of these five koshas. So when these potatoes and tomatoes and chapatis, dosha, idli, etc. is outside, then I call it that. That tomato looks very nice. That idli looks very nice. I want to eat that idli. I refer to it by that. But the moment the annam comes in and it becomes annarasa, it becomes a part of this body, then I start calling that same annam me. And the attributes of this annamaya are taken to be my attributes. This is where the correction in my vision is needed, that the weight of this body originates from this annam. So these attributes of this body belong to this annam originated body, not to me. This is the viveka that is required. This is the Annamaya Kosha. So next we come to the Prāṇamaya. We will read that portion. Prāṇamaya kaha.
Prāṇamaya kaha.
Prāṇādhyaha pañcavāyavaha.
Prāṇādhyaha pañcavāyavaha.
Vāgādīndriya-pañcakam prāṇamaya koṣah.
Vāgādīndriyam pañcakam prāṇamaya koṣah.
So now it's coming to the next kosha. So as we will see, this proceeds from the grosser kosha to the subtler kosha in the order of subtlety. Therefore, Prāṇamaya kaha. What is this Prāṇamaya? So we say Prāṇādhyaha Panchavayavaha. So the first part of this Prāṇamaya Kosha are the Panchavayavaha, or the Pancha Pranas that we have already seen. Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, and Samana. Prana is this respiratory Vayu, Raggamanavan. And Apana is the evacuatory Adhogamavan, that moves downwards. Samana, Sharira Madhyagataha. It stays in the middle of the body and it digests the food that is taken in. Vyana, Vishwagamanavan, moves in all directions. It takes the energy from the digested food and circulates it across the body. Vyana. And Udanaha, Urdhvagamanavan, which is this reversing prana that becomes activated at the time of vomiting or at the time of death. As we said, Udana is the packer and mover that drags the Sukshma Shariram out of the Sthula Sharira. So, all of these pranas, primarily, they are all related to energy, some form of energy. And this energy is taken from the food that is consumed. Now, we put fuel in a car, and when the fuel is converted to energy, it's expressed in the form of movement of the wheels. So, similarly, when we take in this food, and the food is converted to energy, then the energy is expressed in the form of the mobilization of these karmendriyas. And that is why this Vagadi Indriya Panchakam, they are also a part of the Prāṇamaya Kosha. Because they are operated based on the energy. They are an expression of my Kriya Shakti. So these Pancha Pranas plus Pancha Karmendriyas are called the Prāṇamaya Kosha. Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, and Upastha. These are the Pancha Karmendriyas, this organ of speech, Vak. Pani, this organ of grasping. Pada, the organ of locomotion. Payu, the organ of evacuation, and Upastha, the organ of reproduction. These are the Pancha Karmendriyas. So the Pancha Pranas plus Pancha Karmendriyas is the Prāṇamaya Kosha, which is an apparatus for the expression of my Kriya Shakti. This is the apparatus for acting. For acting, I require energy. I require these organs of action. In a dead body, the Prāṇamaya has left. The Annamaya is still there, the Prāṇamaya has left because the Sukshma Sharira has left. Therefore, there is no energy, no action is possible in a dead body. This is the Prāṇamaya. Now, how does the Prāṇamaya become a Kośa? Again, when it covers the Ātmā, that is when it becomes a Kośa. When I mistake the attributes of the Prāṇamaya to be my attributes. For example, if I say that my breathing is very agitated, or my breathing is very calm, or I say I am hungry, I am thirsty, I am tired, I am healthy, I am sick. So in all of these, there is an identification with the Prāṇamaya without knowing the reality of the Ātmā. We are not saying change the language. If I go to a doctor, and if there's a jnani who knows the Ātmā, and he goes to a doctor, it's okay for him to say that I have pain in this part or I am feeling tired. A jnani doesn't necessarily need to change the language to say this body is feeling tired. He doesn't have to change his language. He can still say, I am tired, but understand that the Ātmā can never be tired. So what we are here talking about is that saying I am tired without an understanding of the Ātmā and giving this I am tired a certain degree of reality that it doesn't have. In all of these, that taking the Ātmā to be tired, taking myself to be really tired, really hungry, really thirsty, really healthy, really sick, etc. There's an identification with the Prāṇamaya Kośa where there's an ignorance that the I is really the Ātmā. So this is how the Prāṇamaya becomes a Kośa. Then next we come to the Manomaya Kośa, and we will read that. Manomaya Kośah kaha.
मनोमयः कोशः कः
मनश्च ज्ञानेन्द्रियपञ्चकं मिलित्वा
मनश्च ज्ञानेन्द्रियपञ्चकं मिलित्वा
यो भवति स मनोमयः कोशः.
यो भवति स मनोमयः कोशः.
So this is the Manomaya, the psychological, emotional, the mental sheath. We start with the Manomaya, we start with the mind first. Manascha, so it includes the mind, which is the seat of emotions and desires. Manomaya represents the Ichha Shakti, as we saw. So Prāṇamaya is an apparatus for the expression of Kriya Shakti. Manomaya is an apparatus for the expression of the Ichha Shakti. We don't criticize desires in general or this power of desiring. It's actually a power. It can be a privilege. But when these desires become materialistic, then we say that it will keep one in the samsara chakra. So we don't say get rid of desires. We say refine the desires. That's what Vedanta teaches. And a refinement of the desires is required from materialistic desires to spiritual desires. Even this mumukshutvam is a desire for moksha. And that is something that is praised in the Shastra. So if desire for moksha, desire for dharma, desire for moksha, all of this is encouraged. If desires themselves were bad, if this power to desire was bad, then the Shastra would not have encouraged the desire for dharma and moksha. But mumukshutvam is an essential part of the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. Therefore, this power of desire is an important power. Because of this, only one can progress towards dharma and moksha also. And all of this requires the Manomaya Kosha. Without that, this power to desire cannot be there. But the power to desire presumes the power to know also. Therefore, these Jnanendriyas are also included in the Manomaya Kosha. Only if I know something, I can desire it. So, Manascha Jnanendriya Panchakam Militva. That becomes the Manomaya Kosha. So, when does this Manomaya become a Kosha? Jnani also has Manomaya. For him, it is not a Kosha that covers the Ātmā. Then, if I take the states of this Manomaya to be my states, if there is an ignorance of Ātmā, and then there is a misconception that the states of the mind are my states, then the Manomaya becomes a Kosha that covers the Ātmā. So when I say that I am agitated, or even saying that I am calm, I am calm now, I am meditating, I am very calm now. So in that, I'm taking the state of the Manomaya to be my state. Once I stop meditating, I have to go back into this world. I will lose this calmness. If there are ideas like this that I have in my mind, then Manomaya has become a Kośa. Mind has been wrongly taken to be the Ātmā. So this is then the Manomaya Kośa. Then we'll go to the Vijñānamaya. Vijñānamaya kaha.
Vijñānamaya kaha.
Buddhi ज्ञानेन्द्रिय पंचकम मिलित्वा
बुद्धिज्ञानेन्द्रिय पंचकं मिलित्वा
यो भवति स विज्ञानमयः कोशः.
यो भवति स विज्ञानमयः कोशः.
Vijñānamaya Kośa. This is the intellectual or knowledge, rational layer of my personality. And this is an apparatus, the Vijñānamaya is an apparatus for the expression of my Jnana Shakti. As we said, Kriya always presupposes desire, Ichha. For Kriya to be there must be some Ichha backing the Kriya. There must be some desire. And for desire to be there, it presupposes knowledge. Jnanam has to be there. So Jnanam leads to Ichha, Ichha leads to Kriya. Knowledge leads to desire, desire leads to action. Now, all knowledge doesn't necessarily lead to desire. For example, Swamiji gives this funny example that a person on Janmashtami day, they have prepared all this Vella Chidai and Uppu Chidai and all that. But this person looks at it. He looks at the Chidai. But then no desire arises in his mind for that Chidai. Why? Because he is toothless. He cannot bite that Chidai. Similarly, there is a person who looks at this advertisement for the shampoo. And these people, poor people, they put in so much effort into creating the shampoo ad with this lady who has just taken a bath and waving her hair and all that. And this person looks at it, he has no desire for the shampoo because he's clean here. His upper head is reflecting the sunlight very well. So there is no desire for the shampoo. So knowledge doesn't necessarily lead to desire. But if there is a desire, that cannot be there without some knowledge. For example, I cannot desire a gagabugai because I don't know what a gagabugai is. So knowledge leads to desire, that leads to action. So the Vijñānamaya is an expression of my Jnana Shakti. This is where I know things. For example, I go to a marriage. In marriage, there's a lot of flowers that are used in the decoration on the stage and in front of the stage. So there, this person is wondering, what flowers are these? And then he looks at the flowers. So then there's a modification in the mind that takes place, that this is a red flower. There's a modification of the mind. But then one concludes that this is a rose. So the modification of the mind happens in the Manomaya. But then the conclusion arises in the mind, this is a rose. That is in the Vijñānamaya. But then there are so many flowers. This person then gets a doubt, are these real flowers or fake flowers? Again, this doubt arises in the Manomaya, because in Manaha we saw Sankalpa Vikalpatmakam. So this doubt persists. And then the reason this doubt arises because these colors look very realistic. So these look like real flowers. But then would he have spent so much money? Because so many flowers are there, that would have cost a lot. Would they have spent so much on this wedding for flowers? This kind of doubt arises in his mind. So now he is very curious. So when everybody goes to eat, then he sneaks onto the stage. And then he touches the petal. So once he touches the petal, this touch is unmistakable because there is a slightly moist touch, a moist and a smooth touch that cannot be replicated by a fake flower. So at that instant, now he knows this is a real rose. Because plastic or cloth, whatever the fake flowers are made of, they can never replicate this touch. So now this conclusion that this is a real flower again happens in the Vijñānamaya Kośa. Now he knows certainly this is a real flower. So we say ultimately that Ātmā Jnanam also has to take place in this buddhi only. Vijñānamaya Kośa is where the Ātmā Jnanam has to take place in the intellect. That the Ātmā is not affected by anything, that the Ātmā is Satyam, that knowledge has to take place in the Mithya Buddhi. This is the Vijñānamaya Kośa. The Vijñānamaya, the combination of Buddhi and these Jnanendriyas, Buddhi Jnanendriya Panchakam Militva Yo Bhavati Saha Vijñānamaya. How does this Vijñānamaya become a Kośa? Again, when I take the attributes of the Vijñānamaya to be my attributes, at that point it covers the Ātmā figuratively. So I have decided this, I know this. I know this, that this is a real flower. I did this, I did not do this. When I take myself to be this doer, I did this action, I have not done this action, I am guilty. All of these are conclusions. They take place in the Vijñānamaya. And in this, there is a covering of the Ātmā. This is how Vijñānamaya becomes a Kośa. As we saw, that Sukshma Shariram is Pancha Jnanendriyani, Pancha Karmendriyani, Pancha Prāṇādayaha, Manaschaikam Buddhischaika, Evam Saptadasha Kalabhis Sahayas Yattishtati, Tat Sukshma Shariram. 17 parts were there in the Sukshma Sharira. So out of these 17 parts, we took out the Pancha Prāṇaha and Pancha Karmendriya and now called it the Prāṇamaya Kośa. That's an apparatus for Kriya Shakti. Then what is left? Out of 17 we have taken 10, 7 are left. The Pancha Jnanendriyani, Manaha and Buddhi. So out of these we took the Manaha and Pancha Jnanendriya and we called it the Manomaya Kośa. Then what is left? The Buddhi alone is left. But we take the Jnanendriya again, the Buddhi plus Jnanendriya, we called it the Vijñānamaya Kośa. So this is how the Sukshma Sharira gets divided into the 3 Koshas, Manomaya, Vijñānamaya and Prāṇamaya. Now we come to the Anandamaya Kośa. Anandamaya kaha.
Anandamaya kaha.
Evameva karana sharira bhuta vidyasthamalina sattvam.
Evameva karana sharira bhuta vidyasta malina sattvam.
Priyadivritti sahitam sat.
Priyadivritti sahitam sat.
Anandamaya koshaha.
Anandamaya koshaha.
Etat kosha panchakam.
Etat kosha panchakam.
Now we come to the subtlest of these Pancha Koshas, which is called the Anandamaya. So it defines Anandamaya as karana sharira bhuta vidyastha malina sattvam and priyadi vritti sahitam sat. So here we will take the word sattvam first. So karana sharira has got these three gunas because Maya is trigunatmika. As we have seen before, Maya has got these three gunas of sattva, rajas and tamas. The karana sharira comes at the same level as Maya. It is really resident in Maya. The unmanifest sthula sukshma shariram. Maya is this unmanifest jagat. So since this is of the same matter, same kind of matter as Maya is, it is composed of these three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. And these three gunas are what flow from the karana sharira to the sukshma and sthula sharira also. These determine the type of the personality that emerges out of the karana sharira, the distribution of these gunas. So sattva guna, as we have seen earlier in other contexts also, represents knowledge. When sattva is predominant, then this person is more engaged in knowledge, pursuit of knowledge, always learning something. He may be sitting in the library, looking at books, always trying to gain some new knowledge. When sattva is predominant. And the jnanendriyas are more active in such a person as compared to the karmendriyas. When rajas is active, rajas is predominant, then this is a highly active person. So this person is very, very engaged in some activity or another, like social service or doing some business, and is very, very involved in that business day and night. Knowledge and other things, they take a lesser priority in his life when rajas is active. The karmendriyas are very active. Then the third is tamas. When tamas is predominant, then there is more of rest. And tamas is also important. Such a person may become lazy or dull if tamas is predominant. But tamas is also really required in our lives in a certain balance, because if tamas is not there, one will be unable to sleep. So the reason we are able to go to sleep is because of tamas. And sleep is very important for a healthy life. So tamas is needed for the rest and rejuvenation also. So when tamas is predominant, then the jnanendriyas are also not active, the karmendriyas are not active. And such a person, if tamas is in excess, even during waking state, etc., can become dull and lazy. So now it says, Karana Sharira Bhuta Vidyastha Malina Sattvam. So in deep sleep, this tamas is predominant. And tamas is predominant to such an extent that it completely overcomes rajas, and therefore there is no activity in deep sleep. And this tamas also almost overcomes sattva, because there is no knowledge in deep sleep also. This is predominantly ignorant. But we say that it almost overcomes sattva, because a little bit of sattva is not overcome by tamas. And that is why I know that I don't know anything. So predominantly the experience is I don't know anything, but I know still that I don't know anything. That is because there is this sattva that has been almost overcome by tamas, but not completely overcome like rajas. So the fact that rajas has been completely overcome, that leads to this mind not being active anymore, and therefore the activity of the mind like worry, etc., are not there in deep sleep. So sukhena maya nidranubhuyate. I experience happiness. But this knowledge that I don't know is there. So this malina sattvam is there. Sattvam is not completely overcome. That's what we mean by malina sattvam. So in this, there is a reflection of the Atmananda also. So there is experienced happiness. So this is the Anandamaya Kosha. And we said this Karana Sharira Bhuta Vidya Sthamalina Sattvam. So as we have seen, Karana Sharira, Anadya Vidya, Anirvachanadya Vidya Rupam. As we saw, this Karana Sharira is of the nature of avidya, of the nature of ignorance. So Karana Sharira Bhuta Vidyastha. So in this Karana Sharira, that is of the nature of ignorance, there is this sattva that is almost overcome by tamas. So that is the Anandamaya Kosha, because in this, the Atmananda, in this quiet state of mind, the Atmananda is reflected, and therefore there is this experiential happiness, experienced in sleep. That is uniform for everybody. There are no degrees, there are no variations in it. That is called Anandamaya Kosha. And then there is a second part to the Anandamaya Kosha as well, which is called this Priyadi Vritti Sahitam. So in the waking or dream state, I experience degrees of happiness. So in deep sleep state, I experience this uniform happiness. There are no degrees to it. But in waking or dream sleep, dream state, I experience degrees of happiness. Like I'm happy, I'm now happier, I'm now happiest. So these are called this priyadi vritti. There are also modifications of the mind. This happiness is a modification of the mind, in which the Atmananda is reflected. But there are degrees, there are gradations in this happiness. When I see an object that I like, and that leads to an experiential happiness in the mind. Ishta Darshanajam, it's called. Ishta Darshanajam, meaning seeing an object that I like. So it is called Priya. This happiness that is experienced is called Priya. Then when I acquire this object that I like, then there is a greater happiness compared to just seeing it. So Ishta Grahanajam, when this object is acquired, there is greater happiness in the mind. This is called Moda Vritti. Then when one actually experiences that object that one likes, then that is the greatest happiness in the mind. It's all relative. And that is called Pramoda Vritti. It's called Ishta Anubhavajam. Ishtanubhavajam. It is called Pramoda Vrittihi. So Priya, Moda and Pramoda. Happy, happier, happiest. So these are all degrees of happiness that are experienced in the mind, and this is also a part of the Anandamaya Kosha. So then, how does this Anandamaya become a Kosha? So when I say that I am happy now, when I say I am happy now, so in that, there is an understanding that I am only happy in this particular situation. I was not happy earlier. When this situation changes, I will cease to be happy. In all of this, there is a certain confusion, also a non-understanding of the Ātmā and a misunderstanding of the Ātmā to be this experiential attribute, to be a part of the Ātmā, to be an attribute of the Ātmā. So when this kind of a mistake is there, then that is the Anandamaya Kosha. It covers my real nature of the Ātmā. The Ātmā is of the nature of Ananda. When I don't understand it, then I seek experiential happiness. I want to retain the experiential happiness. This is like sugar trying to retain its sweetness because the sugar doesn't understand I'm sweet by nature. It is like fire trying to retain its heat because fire doesn't understand I'm hot by nature. So when this kind of a confusion is there, where I seek out experiential happiness and then I want to retain that experiential happiness, all of this is indicative of this Anandamaya Kosha covering my real nature as Ātmā. That is how it becomes a Kosha. And then what Tattva Bodha says? Stula Sukshma Karana Sharirad Vyatiriktaha Pancha Kośātītaḥ san. It said Ātmā is Pañca Kośātītaḥ. We've discussed all of these Pancha Koshas now in Tattva Bodha. That is why it says Etat Kosha Panchakam. These are the five koshas. So now we related to the statement Tattva Bodha made earlier that Ātmā is Pancha Kośātītaḥ. It is Ātmā is different from transcending these Pancha Koshas. So it is different from transcending, but not really away from. That is important. So here in the Panchakosha Viveka, the Upanishad, and Tattva Bodha, which is a restatement of the Upanishad, it is trying to bring my attention to the Ātmā by going from Sthula to Sukshma, by going from the grosser layers to the subtler layers. So this approach, this prakriya is known as Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. Why is it called Arundhati Darshana Nyaya? Because when this bride and groom are newly married, at that point they are shown the Vasishtha and Arundhati stars. They are supposed to do the Arundhati Darshanam. And Arundhati is a star. Because Vasishtha and Arundhati are considered to be an ideal couple. So Arundhati is a very faint star. It cannot be pointed out directly. And the way, therefore, it is pointed out that one first asks, so do you see that moon in the sky? So they say yes. And now from the moon he jumps to a star nearby. And then they ask, do you see that star nearby, that bright star? So he says yes. So then on the left hand side of the bright star, just at a certain angle, do you see that fainter star? He says yes. Yes, that is Vasishtha. And now next to Vasishtha, do you see that faintest star, that little thing that is twinkling? So he says yes. So that is Arundhati. So the aim is to try to bring one to Arundhati. But one goes from grosser to the Sukshma layers. So similarly, the aim of Vedanta is to bring one to Ātmā. But since the Ātmā is very subtle, one starts with the grosser layers of the personality and then moves to Ātmā. So initially one takes this Sthula Sharira to be the Ātmā, but then Vedanta points out Sthula Sharira is not the Ātmā. Then one takes Prāṇamaya to be the Ātmā. Then one says Prāṇamaya is also not the Ātmā, it is Anātma. Then one takes Manomaya to be the Ātmā. Then one says Manomaya is also not the Ātmā, it is Anātma. One takes Vijñānamaya to be the Ātmā. It says Vijñānamaya is also not the Ātmā, it is Anātma. Then one takes Anandamaya to be the Ātmā. Vedanta says Anandamaya also not the Ātmā, it is Anātma. So all of these Pancha Koshas are negated, going from the grosser to the subtlest layer. And then arises a question, everything is negated, what is left? You have negated everything, what is left? Say every mithya has got a satyam adhishthanam. This is one of the satyam mithya principles that we studied. So behind every mithya, there has to be satyam. Without the satyam, the mithya cannot even exist. There cannot be any mithya necklace, bangle or ring without the gold. There cannot be a mithya snake without the rope. So we negate all the mithyas. What is left? What is not negatable alone is left, and Satyam can never be negated. So upon negating all of the negatable Pancha Koshas, the non-negatable Ātmā, that alone is left. And I am that Ātmā. And I, the Ātmā, that is left after negating all that can be negated, is of a higher order of reality, and therefore it is untouched, unaffected by the Pancha Koshas. Therefore it is Pañcakośātītaḥ. And with this, we conclude our discussion today. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.